Thank you, Lynn, and good morning, everybody. I think the first thing I want to do is just really reiterate what Peggy Hamburg said yesterday about just how much Peggy, all of our colleagues at FDA really appreciate what the IOM is doing here. We feel very fortunate that we could come to the Institute of Medicine and on fairly short notice put together a workshop of this quality, and I really appreciate the work of Ann Yakteen and others on the IOM staff, the planning committee, all the participants here. I mean, this is work that's just crucial to our deliberations on caffeine, and we really appreciate your being here. That we have to get the science right, first of all, to understand whether, in fact, there are any safety concerns regarding these new uses of caffeine that warrant steps by FDA. And we really appreciate the open dialogue, the frank expression of views that we heard yesterday. I think it's fair to say we've fallen just a bit short of unanimity on the answers to the questions that are being addressed. But this open dialogue and this engagement of experts with diverse perspectives is really crucial to our work. And we've certainly underscored here the reality that the issues, the scientific and public health issues that we're addressing aren't simple. And it really begins for me with just the understanding that caffeine is no ordinary food additive. It is a central nervous system stimulant. It's a drug, with multiple effects in the human body. It's different from virtually everything else we regulate as added ingredients in food, in that it is put in food, not for its effect in food, but for its effect in the human body. And it's sought by consumers for that pharmacologic effect. And so these are very unique attributes of caffeine as an added ingredient in food. It's also been around for centuries, and we know through the traditional uses of caffeine have been enjoyed and benefited consumers for centuries with apparent safety, certainly as far as healthy adults go. So it's a strange mix of attributes of caffeine that make this an inherently challenging issue for FDA, and it's, again, the reasons why we need the engagement of this community to help us address these issues as we see caffeine breaking out of its traditional boundaries, as a naturally occurring constituent of coffee and tea, and its limited use in soft drinks over the years. It is available now in a much wider variety of food products as well as supplement products, and it's consumed under a range of different use conditions. Ways in which products or caffeine has not been in the marketplace before, resulting in different consumption scenarios, and informs that, I think, particularly in light of our discussion yesterday, important to underscore and address, it informs that are attractive to, are accessible to children and adolescents. And so we have to ask some basic questions, and I just think this workshop yesterday is a terrific start towards answering some of these basic questions that we need to address to do our public health and food safety job. Do these new use conditions raise new safety questions? How do we assess the intake of these new exposure, resulting from these new exposure scenarios that are presented by the wider availability of caffeine and the fact that it is, again, a sought-after ingredient for people wishing to experience its physiological effects? And are there special measures that are needed to address the possibly protect vulnerable populations? So getting the science right and getting our understanding of the public health issues raised by this new environment are the first crucial steps and this workshop is really a centerpiece of our scientific efforts at FDA to address these questions. But further complicating this issue for FDA is that we have to address these questions not in the abstract, but in the context of regulatory frameworks that we are provided by Congress to oversee ingredients in the food supply and dietary supplement ingredients. And in fact, there are two separate frameworks, as most people in this room certainly are well aware. One, addressing dietary supplement products, a framework established by the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act back in the 1990s, which is aimed at products that are in fact designed to supplement the diet with ingredients that presumably provide beneficial effects to consumers. These products are permissible on the market unless there is significant or unreasonable risk of illness or injury under the labeled or ordinary conditions of use. That's essentially the statutory language. And for for dietary ingredients that are not new, the burden is on FDA to prove that that safety standard or that risk standard has been exceeded. The burden on FDA to prove risk to some degree. The food additive law, which addresses the safety of ingredients added to conventional foods, that is, products that are marketed not just to deliver an active ingredient, but to provide traditional food functions like nutrition and flavor and hydration and so forth, are regulated under a separate law. Again, it's the food additive law passed in 1958, establishing a completely different framework for overseeing the addition of substances to the food supply. It is, frankly, a higher standard of safety. It's a reasonable certainty of no harm safety standard that Congress has provided for added ingredients in food. Under the food additive law, the burden is on the industry to prove safety. It's fundamentally designed originally as a pre-market approval system back in 1958. The GRAS concept, the generally recognized as safe concept, of course, is an important feature of that 1958 law, and it does provide, again, familiar territory for particularly all the lawyers in the room, an alternative pathway to the marketplace, one that does not involve FDA pre-market oversight if a company makes some decisions, some judgments based upon its analysis of the science. The substance, the intended use of the substance in order to satisfy this generally recognized as safe standard and to be exempted from the pre-market approval requirement has to meet the same safety standard as though it were being approved as a food additive. There has to be a reasonable certainty of no harm. That finding, to the extent that the use is one that postdates 1958 when the law was passed, that finding has to be based on the same quantity and quality of evidence as though the substance were being approved by FDA under the food additive approval process, and there has to be general recognition that that safety standard has been met based upon publicly available data and information. So these two frameworks are the ones within which we operate. They're the ones within which we will make our decisions. The science is the same. I mean, the scientific issues of how caffeine affects the body, whether there are effects that should be addressed with respect to vulnerable populations, all the issues that are being addressed here, the science is the same, but the regulatory frameworks are different. Despite the difference in the regulatory frameworks, there are similar options potentially available to FDA, and I underscore potentially. We have not made any decisions. We don't, we haven't don't have any preconceived ideas about what the right answers are. But under either law, if we can meet the legal standard with the science available, we do have options. We can, again, if the science justifies this, if the public health and consumer protection need justifies this, we can potentially restrict levels of caffeine in products. We can restrict conditions of use in some circumstances, certain types of products or label instructions for use. And we can use labeling to inform consumers about the content of the quantitative amount of caffeine in products, and as well as to provide cautionary statements where appropriate. I mean, these are all elements of the toolkit that we have under either law. So I think it goes without saying, and I guess the point that I want to underscore, and again, this is in the mode of appreciating the engagement of this community, caffeine is just an extraordinarily complex scientific puzzle, regulatory puzzle, a public health puzzle for us. And to solve it, we're well aware of the need to work with this community, with the scientific community, with the industry community, and with consumers to get this right. And that's fundamentally why we're here, is to have this sort of dialogue. These 2 days won't be the only opportunities we'll have, but this is, I think, just a terrific coming together of folks who, again, have expertise, have different perspectives, and just crucially important to us to get them on the table and to have the record that the IOM process will generate. As the Commissioner indicated yesterday, we do appreciate the restraint that many food companies are exercising as we work to figure this out. We welcome GMA's call yesterday for collaboration to define boundaries around the use of caffeine in food. We think there need to be some boundaries. If you look at the array of products to which caffeine is being added, we think this is important in the interest of consumers. And we certainly look forward to the dialogue ahead that's going to enable us to get to those right answers. So again, thank you, Lynn. Thanks to the IOM, and thanks to all of you. And I will continue to be here, barring, again, mishap, which so far has not happened, soaking up the discussion and really benefiting from this dialogue. So thank you very much.
And thanks to you, Mike. I'm very impressed to see such high-level leadership spending so much time with our community and listening to these presentations. It's impressive to see the commitment to science and to the incorporation of science in your decision-making, however that might go. A reminder that is, that we are tasked with actually looking at the issues around the assessment of the risks to caffeine, the exposures, the health hazards, the potentially safe levels, but not how it's managed. And that is certainly a problem that Mike has on his shoulders and the others at FDA, but we are not tasked with actually talking about that in this workshop. Our job is, as I think Mike said very eloquently, regardless of the legal frameworks, the science is the same, but can we help them with sharpening that up and defining that so that they can at least use the science in a reasonable way. And to help to get there, one of the issues that they wished us to explore is the issue of other compounds that may impact caffeine's effects. And many of you are aware that products on the market often have multiple compounds in them. One of the presenters yesterday pointed out that coffee itself has thousands of compounds in it. But we are not going to be looking at thousands of compounds, but we are going to be talking about a couple of them. And Jim Coughlin, who's a member of our committee, is going to be moderating this session. Dr. Coughlin is president of Coughlin and Associates, and he has over 35 years of experience in addressing and shaping the current understanding of food and environmental toxicology and safety, chemical risk assessment, risk-benefit evaluation of foods and food ingredients, as well as GRAS food additive safety evaluations and scientific risk communication. In so doing, he's going to be assisted by a group of folks, but who he will begin to introduce. So, Jim, if you could come forward, and thank you for all of your assistance in organizing this workshop as well as leading this panel.